Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's very seasonally themed edition of the Garage Workshop, and in this week's video we're going to be making one of these.
A wooden Christmas tree.
Roll the intro. Okay, so for this Christmas tree project, I'm going to use this piece of wood, which is actually a really nice piece of wood. And as you can see, I got it as an offcut, a very well-known DIY store in the UK that's got an orange logo. And it was £1.50. But if you look at the end, the board is really cupped. And what I've done is, over the last sort of 6 weeks probably that I've had this, I've had it lying in the garage workshop under some very heavy other items, and I thought it would have, you can probably see it better now, I thought it would have levelled it out, but it actually hasn't. So what the plan is, I've measured him from one side, and I think I've got at least 3 or 4 inches, sort of 8 or 10 centimetres, before the wood cups. So I'm going to set up the table saw and just run it through and cut the strip back so that I've got at least one good edge. Now the only other thing is, on this edge there's like a little sort of broken off bit where it looks like it's been stuck to something before, and there's a little bit of writing on it. So I'm going to make sure that when I cut it off, I just trim off that rough edge as well. But I think I've got the amount of wood that I need to cut the slats that we're going to use to make the Christmas tree. So I'm going to set up the table saw and do that now. So I ran it through my table saw, which was a lot more difficult than this looks actually. It was actually quite hard to cut this piece of pine. Okay, so as you'll have seen, I just cut this piece of wood down. I originally cut it for 6 centimetres wide. But to be honest, I think that's a little bit too wide for what I want to do, so I've just cut it to 5. The other thing is, as I said, I bought this offcut of wood. I didn't know what wood this was before I cut into it. I presumed it was pine, but the overwhelming smell of this wood, I'm saying this is definitely pine. It really smells very strongly. So I've now got my strip of wood, and it's over to the miter saw now to start cutting in the angles on it. Now I'm going to use, there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube, especially at the moment, it's flooded with videos of making wooden Christmas trees like this. I'm going to use the angle that a lot of woodworkers use. So I'm going to make all my cuts 30 degrees. So I'm going to bevel my miter saw to 30 degrees. And the other thing I'm going to do, and a lot of people do this in different ways, I'm going to use my miter saw, but I'm going to angle my miter saw and cut the wood this way up, not that way. There's 2 reasons why I want to do that. Number 1, I think it'll be much easier to handle, and number 2, I've got the cutting depth on my miter saw to make a cut that's that big. So that is a conscious choice. I know some people use table saws, which of course I've got the table saw, I could do it, and some people put it in their miter saw and have it that way, but I'm actually going to go for standing it up. So the next thing to do is start measuring and cutting this piece of wood to get the individual bits of wood that I need. So let's do that now. So the first thing to do here was to get just a single cut on the end of the piece of wood at 30 degrees, and then that was going to be the beginning measuring point for all of the rest of the angles. So the next thing to do was obviously measure and cut back the individual sections of the tree, but getting that angle was the most important starting point for the rest of the measuring. So once I'd levelled off the edge, it was important to get accurate measurements. So as you can see here, I'm actually starting from the angled cut, and I'm starting at 10 centimetres, and there's a reason for that. I didn't want to use the end of the tape measure, so I wanted a nice equal measure, and then I just went up in 15s and marked out 4 15 centimetre pieces. So here I'm just using a set square to put the lines in, which were going to be where the miter saw made the cuts, and the angle cuts actually cut through or intersect those lines, so it was important to get them straight. So here I'm just making the angled cuts for the 4 pieces, and as you can see by the way the wood is laid, these cuts are parallel to each other. So effectively you're making a trapezoid or a 4-sided shape with the lines running in both directions. Now on this build, you do have to make 2 sets of cuts in a different direction, and I'll show you that in a minute, but this bit was really important to get right. So it's important to see that here I flipped the piece of wood over, and the mark I made on this piece, which was 170mm or 17 centimetre, this chunk, is so that the 2 angles are inverted, not parallel, if you see what I mean. So they're both going in more like a sort of pyramid than keeping parallel. It was then time to cut the last 2 sections, and again you'll see I flipped it over, and this one there was the 30 centimetre section and 10 centimetre section, and they basically effectively make the base of the tree. So here you can see I'm making the cut, and this is one of the only pieces of the sides of the tree, as it were, that has to be cut the other way, and you'll see at the end why. That's specifically to join the top, but you can see what I mean there about the sort of pyramid edges. So I'll put a component list in the description, and here I'm just finishing off the last cuts. I was just very, very, very careful, as you can see, taking my time, and then my hose dropped out. I'm just very, very careful to make sure that these cuts are precise as possible, because if they're not, the tree won't go together. So you've got to get these cuts absolutely right. And as you can see there, nice sided cut, and I've handily written on for you the size. That's 170mm or 17 centimetres. So in this you can see all of the assorted elements, and as I said, I will put a list in the description. So that's the 30 centimetre 300mm section, and then we've got 3 pieces on each side. So of those, 6 pieces for 150, and one is 5 or 150, sorry, and one is 170, and one of the 150s has got a slightly different cut. So I offered it all up, and this was the first time that I actually put it together. Now the overlap you can see there, I'm just doing by eye where these are overlapping each other, and obviously they're not measured equal each side, and I did eventually settle on a 25 centimetre sort of overlap, which seemed to work, and it seemed to get it to fit together. And there were just a couple of little bits there that needed knocking off with a hand sander. But there you can see the completed shape, and I was very relieved that when I'd all put it all together, there's a little bit here, there and everywhere, but it was exactly what I wanted it to be, and obviously when I glued and tack it, it will look perfect. The last element was just to put the base on to finish the tree off, which again fitted really nicely. All I need to do is measure that and fit it in the middle. I'm not going to lie, this is not the greatest piece of filming, and this was actually a hell of a lot more fiddly than I thought it was going to be, because what I wanted to do was measure from the sort of backward cut of the angle, which is where the overlap would be, and it was actually really, really difficult to do that. So apologies for the dodgy filming and the fact that my hand's in the way, but essentially what I'm doing is marking back 2.5 centimetres from the bottom of that angle. You can't tell because of my ridiculous hand in the way, and I probably should have moved the camera back, but I'm essentially putting in the overlap of 2.5 centimetres on each side. So when I come to glue them, I've got a place to mark up and to get them together so that they fit on there correctly. So I'll end this horrible piece of filming now, but at least you know it was a 2.5 centimetre overlap. So the next thing I did was just knock off the edges with a little hand sander. To be honest, the cuts were good, I just wanted to get them flat. So the next thing was to put them together. So I got out the tight bond and I got them lined up, just put a clamp on them, and then went to my air gun. I'm still having this problem with my air gun, which I think is user error, and you'll see in a minute it's double shooting in, even though I took the advice that I was given by some people on the channel, which was great advice, to use better tacks. It is still double firing some of my nails, which is getting very annoying. So I just duplicated on the other side, paying close attention to that one piece that has the sort of double cut. So with that done, it was just a case now of hooking the whole thing together, joining at the 2, and that's why you can see there you have those 2 on the different angles so they match up. So I hooked the whole thing together and it was done. I then attached the base, and this would have been the opportunity for me to sort of pull things in and pull them together, but to be honest, it didn't need it. It fitted really nicely. I then put a line in the middle of the big base and the little base, lined it up and clamped it, and just popped a couple in. So off camera I'd filled in the holes from the pins. I forgot to film that, huge apologies. And then I got out my brand new DeWalt sander, and I'll put a link here for my 10-minute tool review of that product. And I gave it a really good sanding all over until it was all nice and smooth and ready for painting. I then gave it a rapid coat of gloss white paint all over and in every gap, which took quite a while. It was actually a little bit more fiddly to paint than I expected this, but I got it all on and I gave it plenty of time to dry overnight.
So here is the finished Christmas tree, and I've got to be honest, overall I'm happy with how it's turned out. Now, when I painted it yesterday, I did lay the paint on quite thick, and I thought that would be enough and it would only need one coat. But looking on the inside, there probably are a couple of little places, particularly the end grain of the wood, where I will just need to touch it up. So I will give it another coat just to make doubly sure. But I'm very pleased with it. As I said, I'll put the cut list in the description, but really simple to make. I mean, I used a miter saw and a table saw to do this, but you could literally do this with a hand saw, and it looks very effective. Now, the other thing you can do, which I've chosen not to do, but I've seen a lot of people do, is to run some of those LED lights on the inside of it. I actually have got a set, so I perhaps might try and do that. But overall, very pleased with how it looked out, and a great little Christmas project, and easily something you can put in your windowsill or in a bedroom or anywhere you like. So that's the end of the project. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, please can I ask you to subscribe, like and comment. If you're one of my regular viewers, please can I ask you to like and comment as well. It's really, really important to the channel. And as of this video, I think we're nearly at 600 subscribers. It'd be great to get to 1,000. So as I've said before, please pass it on to anyone else you know. Hope you have a fantastic week, fellow woodworkers, and join me next week where we might have something else a bit Christmassy themed. Take care.